Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea. I'm your host as always, Elwood Jones, and joining me of course is my co-host, Ms. Kim Lowe.
Hello.
And you're listening to our 2023 Top 10 Film Discoveries. Unlike a lot of blogs and other movie podcasts out there, we don't tend to focus on the year's releases. Instead, we focus on the film discoveries of the year, as we find it provides a much more interesting list than just sort of churning out the same movies that everyone else is doing at this time of year. And let's face it, I mean, we're constantly discovering movies, we're constantly talking about movies here on the show, so what better way to really sort of celebrate those great discoveries, because a good movie shouldn't just be limited to the year of its release, and this gives us a chance to highlight for both of ourselves our top 10 favourite films of this year. So, Kim, how's 2023 been as a movie watching year for yourself? Has it been good, bad?
I would probably categorize it in the average.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there were basically putting together this list. It was fairly easy because there were a lot of films that really stood out, and then a lot of films just fell into the, it was okay. It was passable viewing experience, but nothing to really call home about, It was really easy to identify the ones that really stood out, but isn't that like how things usually are? There's like those rare films that really stand out, and then most of the films are just kind of like, yeah, it could be fun, it's good, some bad, I didn't watch a lot of bad movies. I mean, I think I sat through, I think the worst movies I watched was probably the 365 Days trilogy, and I don't even know why I watched it, and I watched the whole thing, and we had to chat about that before off air, and you were like, you watched one, it wasn't enough, and you went on to watch all three.
Exactly. I think I had my two worst movies I accidentally watched back to back, and that was Scream 3 and Crystal Fairy and the Magic Cactus, and it was like, these are like my two lowest ranked movies of like the entire year, and I just happened to watch them back to back, so that was certainly a fun day. And yeah, there's certainly been, with this year, I think there's been a couple of movies which I saw them and I thought, oh, well, that's going to be like my movie of the year. And then as we've gone on, you've had one or two movies that have just like completely gone straight in at that top spot and really sort of messed up the ranking. Because you get at a certain point, especially around December, when you're sort of finalising the list, you think, oh, great, I've got everything like in line. Oh, I've got all my ducks in order here. And then you see something that just like completely disrupts the order. Or you see a bunch of things in the disrupt the order. Certainly things like watching the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I thought was going to be ranked really high on this list, and then the more time I spent away from that movie, the more sort of flaws I sort of started picking in it, and it sort of went from falling down the list to completely falling out of the list of my top 50 for this year. And now I can sort of like get to the point where I'm sort of like, yeah, visually it's a very interesting movie, but at the same time it's a film whose choices sort of really go against it. So the first film is still much stronger than this first part of a two-parter that we have with Into. I forget the order with this latest Spider-Verse one. I keep getting whether it's Into or Beyond or what it is, but I'll be interested to see how it ends anyway. So
I mean, for me, it was more trying to catch up to a lot of films that I've been wanting to watch, and I was able to do that with, like, Long Day's Journey Through Night. And then, as much as that film was really, well, it's on Mubi, so it's very artsy-fartsy.
Yeah.
And very abstract, but there were a lot of really interesting bits. It almost made it onto my top 10. And then it kind of fell out, basically. There were a few. No, we had I think my year was filled with movies from like 3.5 to 4 stars. So when we got to kind of like the end of the list, that was where things got a little bit more hard to decide, because, what 4-star films stood out more than the other ones, and then like how do you rank how, like, the impression that I still had at the end of the year versus when I first watched them. And basically it all came down to, rewatchability and probably the impact it had psychologically, or just like the thought-provokingness of it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly if we were limiting ourselves to films released this year, I mean, there's certain films that I think would certainly feature in this list, such as like Cocaine Bear and Bottoms, which I both thought were absolutely phenomenal. The Super Mario Brothers movie and the new Indiana Jones I also thought were really good as well. And I probably would have included that, much like Pell, the prequel / sequel to X. I thought was a real sort of standout movie, and it's when you have films like that and you're just like, oh, I really want to put this in the top 10, and then you look at the top 10 and just how like bomb proof it is. It's like, there's just nothing I can shift off this top 10. So I'm really interested to go through your 10 this evening and to see what it was that made that top spot for yourself. So do you want to kick us off with your number 10 pick for this year?
Yeah, my number 10 pick is Taiwanese film called White Ant. And it's an interesting little psychological drama that was released in 2016, which tells a story about a young man who has sexual fetishism. And I can't say that word properly without being all twisted. And he lives alone, and he kind of like... he has sexual pleasure from basically stealing other women's underwear and wearing them. And one day someone films him doing this, and then sends him the DVD to threaten him that if he continued doing this, that they would exploit him on social media. And this drives him into this anxiety, which eventually leads to not such a good result. And it's basically a social commentary about what is the borderline between how much you should be sharing and how much you should know about someone before you start exploiting them. Like, where is the line where you should draw attention to mental illness, and when is the time that you should be exploiting someone and creating this type of issue? Like, people don't know enough before they start, sharing their opinions and drawing conclusions about them. So it's like kind of a fine line in a social commentary about just, how much you should know about someone before you should draw your own, judgments. And it's one of those films that I thought a lot about whether it should be on the list, and I think that I feel like it's not talked about a lot, but it's something that I, as someone who, we are on social media a lot and we share our opinions a lot about things, where it makes me it landed in kind of like that thought-provoking thing, which really lasted a long time with me. The film itself is kind of slow, but I think it kind of splits itself between part 1 and part 2, which kind of draws a different element of conversation.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this is a new film for myself. I'd seen it's directed by Chu Hsien Che, who comes from a documentary filmmaking background. So I'd be interested to see how they make the jump into sort of feature film production, because normally when you look at documentary filmmakers, they don't tend to do too well when they go into making actual feature films. So I'd be interested to see how the style contrast works there. But certainly it sounds like an interesting one. Reminds me a lot of Haneke's Hidden in many ways. So already that's another one for my watch list. So
yeah, it also features in the main role as Kangren Wu, who started off in kind of like Taiwanese idol dramas, and then eventually he's now basically the face of Netflix series. So he's really done really well with many really great like diverse roles now. And I think he recently won the best male actor in a Malaysian film. So that's he's really good at it. I've been watching him for a while, and he is a very outstanding actor, and I'm glad that this year he got recognized. How about you? What's in your 10th spot?
Well, kicking off my list this year, we have Spontaneous from 2020. This was a year where I actually saw a couple of good high school comedies, because we had this, and I also, as I mentioned already, we saw Bottoms, which was about the two girls forming the female fight club so that they can meet girls. Spontaneous is another unique love story. If you've may have stumbled across this one, it's the one with a really hideous poster, which falls into that same trap as Licorice Pizza, where it's a great movie but it has a stupid title. This one suffered from being a great movie with a stupid poster. The film follows two high school seniors, Mara and Dylan, whose classmates suddenly starts spontaneously exploding. And the film follows the pair over the course of the year as they discover feelings for each other, with Dylan professing his love for her, seeing that since all the classmates are randomly exploding, now might be a better time than any to start telling her exactly how he feels about her. The two embarking on a really sort of sweet relationship. At the same time, the government is trying to figure out why students keep exploding. So it's a film that is got a very smart and funny script, and at the same time has got a healthy dose of splatter as well, making it unique in that standpoint. And it's directed by Brian Duffield, who I have a feeling isn't going to be the only time we talk about him on this list, but he's certainly a favourite of ours here on the show, as he's been responsible as a writer for giving us the likes of Underwater and Love and Monsters, as well as The Babysitter. He also did Insurgent, but we're forgiven for that, since everything else in his filmography has been really great. And he was also a producer on Cocaine Bear as well. But here is only really his first film as a director, as he followed up with No One Will Save You, which made its debut recently this year on Disney Plus or Hulu, depending on where in the world you are. But I think this is, as I say, it's a really sharp and funny high school teen comedy / romance that really sort of brings a unique spin to it just by featuring exploding teenagers.
I really like the concept of Spontaneous. the whole idea of kids exploding, like teenage kids exploding, is this really interesting thing, because you kind of have that, it adds this this underlying threat, right? Because while they're trying to treat it throughout the entire film, you kind of have an idea that how are they going to treat this? You never know if the treatment is going to happen unless someone else explodes, right? So as they're getting closer together, you kind of have this feeling, this kind of like threat constantly at the back, where you feel like, oh, is someone going to explode? Is someone going to explode? But you always know that, your main girl is not going to explode. It's going to be the guy. So you're like, okay, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And then I think it's really interesting that, I really like the camera work of the film itself, because I think that the moment something's going to happen, the camera changes, and it's really good that way.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the fact that our lead, I mean, she's sassy without being wise beyond her years, which was sort of like the pitfall that Juno fell into. And there's so many cute little scenes, such as like when they're in the isolation unit and they're doing the ET thing for the plastic, and it's the fact that characters around them get annoyed with their antics. It's got this very sort of groundedness. But I think Brian Duffield is quickly becoming like one of those writers that I'm just constantly looking out for the next thing that he does, whether he's directing or writing, because he seems to have a really interesting grasp on familiar topics, but he's putting some very interesting spins on them. And I think, as I said, it's a high school love story, but with additional exploding teens. So for that reason alone, it made it in at my number 10 spot. So, but on to number 9, Kim. What did you have?
Number 9 is actually a rare appearance, because I don't really watch films that are older, but then, I mean, it's not really that old. It's 9 to 5 from 1980, and it's an interesting film because it's my first Dolly Parton film. I've never actually watched her in anything else, and I remembered when we did the show for Dumpling, that I really, really like the song 9 to 5, and that was one of my main draws to watch this. And I mean, for those who don't know what 9 to 5 is about, it's about three female employees who have a pretty much like sexist boss, and
Yep.
they decide to kind of like turn things around, to take advantage and turn things around on him, by basically kidnapping him, like and then they start setting up new rules for the office, which ends up actually making the work productivity better. And it's led by Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton. I mean, the film itself is really fun. I think that's the main thing, is there's so much to love about it, because I'm not a big fan of, I think I've already talked about it many times, I'm not a big fan of 1980s movies, but I also tend to always watch horror from 1980s, so it's the rare occasion that I'm watching something more in the, I don't know, like, this is what, a comedy, I guess. And a lot of the comedy lands for me. I actually think it's so fun, and the three ladies have such great dynamic with each other. The little banters and the little chats and the little, frustrations. It's all really, sometimes it feels a little over, but at the same time it just keeps itself being very entertaining throughout the film. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I watched it. I think I watched it like last week, because you said you were watching it, and because it's on Disney Plus, I thought I'd finally cross it off, because I remember the adverts for it being on when I was a kid, and it's one of those female trio ensemble casts, because you had this and you had Witches of Eastwick, which I also watched the same week, so it wasn't a real role for female trios that week. And I enjoyed it, the first half of this film, and then when they start smoking pot and coming up with their fantasy sort of schemes against it, the film sort of falls off the deep end. And it was kind of a shame, really, because it was really coming together, like seeing these women coming to deal with this absolute pig of a boss who's a sexist, and he sexually harasses people, especially Dolly Parton's character. And the fact Dolly Parton is so sassy in this movie, she just sees through his bullshit straight off. It's just like calls him out on it constantly. I think that she's so good, and all three ladies are really great in this. Lily Tomlinson and Jane Fonda. I think they're all really fantastic. It's just a shame that in terms of the actual plotting, it sort of falls off around the midway point. So I was a little disappointed in that respect. But no, it's, as I say, it was an enjoyable watch where it lasted, but I don't think it's one I'm going to return to personally. So.
Yeah, no, obviously I had a different opinion to you, because for me it was really, the part that you were talking about, I actually thought that was fantastic. It was ridiculous, but I think it took like a really fun, ridiculous turn, and it was, I don't know, it was kind of like my type of comedy. Maybe it's because I really like, because as a female seeing this, I feel like them doing this is so fun. It kind of like gives another side to their characters as well, like a darker side to them. Because aside from that, after that, they start really like executing that plan as to like, oh, how are they going to, execute this? And then the whole freak out at the hospital about, oh no, they get the wrong body and stuff. It's just so entertaining. I just really, I think it's such a fun ride. It's a nice little adventure. I think, like a little slice of their life that really, I think it was just, to me, it was just very impressionable.
For myself, at the number 9 slot, I had 12 Angry Men from 1957, directed by Sidney Lumet. This is really sort of a masterclass in how to create a drama out of one single location. If you're not familiar with the film, it follows a defense jury who are trying to decide the fate of a young Spanish American, whether he's guilty or not of murdering his father. And what initially starts off as sort of an open shut case falls down to one of the jurors who really stands up against the rest of the group, because he believes that this man is innocent. And the course of the film really just works around him trying to convince the other 11 men in the room to side with him and give a non-guilty verdict. And it's just such a incredible cast that is assembled here. The fact that the performance is already good, and each of these characters are just so well defined, and their personalities and their beliefs and why they're choosing to vote the way they are, and just to see just one guy just basically battling by himself just to swing a jury's vote is just a real sort of like is just gripping to watch throughout, and just how the pressure's sort of cranked up because the fan doesn't work in the room and it's a hot day, and you really feel that tension slowly sort of crank up as it goes on, and sort of tensions start to rise, and people start to become less polite to each other. William Friedkin also did a remake of this, which is also really good as well, but for my money I would recommend checking out the original from 1957. And that is why it's at my number 9 spot.
Oh boy, I wish I could return to watching this for the first time. I watched it in high school English, and it was fantastic. And till today, I think I've watched it about a dozen times or more. I used to watch it every year. Now it's a little bit less because I don't spend so much time with my DVD player anymore. But I mean, this film is great because it comes from a time where, there's a lot of prejudices, and at the same time, like, it's a man who doesn't believe that things should be, a man standing up for just having a discussion. He might not like think he's not innocent, but at the same time, he doesn't believe that they should just brush it off as an open and shut case because of prejudices, because everyone's just busy and they don't want to, and then they're going to sentence someone to death, right? And I think that, the fact that back then it was to have someone go into the death sentence, it had to be unanimous that everybody agreed to that one verdict. And I really enjoyed the film because of that, like as they start deciphering the thing, using the different resources to kind of, and the memories that each person had as they started thinking back to the different, because you weren't there, basically we're sitting in the jury room. As they're describing it, they're kind of reliving through the whole trial that we haven't been a part of. And I think that that's what makes it so effective is, it's 12 Angry Men is like my top 5 favorite films of all time.
Oh wow.
So to me it's one of those films. I think it's one of those films that I've seen, like top 5 I've seen the most. They rank very high with a lot of my favorites. You talking about it just makes me want to go back and rewatch it, because I never, like, even if you know what goes on, even if you know what the verdict, it's just such a thrilling experience to watch. A really great pick. I'm surprised you haven't seen it earlier, but it's a really great pick. I'm glad you watched it.
There's a lot of classic cinema that I haven't seen, mainly because I was just off watching other things. And I think because there is this idea, like with a lot of old cinema, whether it's still going to sort of hold up or not, and that's why I tend to miss out. But I have actually been trying to watch more classic cinema. I watched obviously like Island of the Damned during Horror Month, which was also really fantastic, and just some that, which was initially on my list, but I think it fell off. 12 Angry Men, it was sort of one of those movies that I always meant to get around to watching, and finally this year I sort of saw it come up on Prime, and I was like, we're going to go and watch this film, and it was really sort of lived up to its reputation, which was great. There's also an Amy Schumer episode where they do 12 Angry Men, but instead they're trying to decide whether Amy Schumer is fuckable or not. But what do you have at your number 8, Kim?
My number 8 is basically, you already talked about it before, is our second, the second Brian Duffield film, No One Will Save You, which aired on, I don't know, Disney Plus, Hulu, wherever you're watching it, right?
It aired somewhere online.
Yeah, it was on some streaming service. And if you haven't seen it, it basically came out in time for Halloween this year. And it's basically about an exiled, anxious girl who basically is very, like, shut into herself in her big property. And she ends up, because she's by herself, she ends up realizing that the city, the little town that she's in, is being attacked, or probably the world, I don't know, is being attacked by aliens. And she basically has to and they've basically invaded her house, and she needs to figure out how to survive when no one will save her. I mean, No One Will Save You is really, really great. I think that it's, I saw, obviously I saw Spontaneous in preparation for our episode right now, and I didn't realize it was Brian Duffield until you told me. And I think that, when you look at the growth from Spontaneous to No One Will Save You, I think that it's so great because this film is a different vibe. It's, I think it also has that tension. You also, like, you don't know what's going to happen next. But this one structures a little differently because there's a bit of, I think, because we're focused around one character, there's a little bit of, like, character analysis here. There's a lot of character development, and there's not a lot of talking. So I think that I've read some people don't like this because there isn't a lot of talking. It's like a lot of things is in the non-narrative, the things that she experiences, the people that she encounters in the short time that everyone is alive, or hasn't been possessed, and just her little interactions and her will to survive. I think all of it is very, very, very fun, and it feels realistic enough to make you feel very drawn into the film.
Yeah, definitely so. I thought this was another really interesting film. It didn't make my top 50 list, but I watched it prior to coming on to the show and certainly enjoyed it. There's a lot of interesting ideas going on. The fact, as I said, because there's a lack of dialogue here, the fact that, this town seems to hate her and you're not sure why they have such a grudge against her. I think it adds all these different elements to the film. But then we obviously have the home invasion element, we have body snatcher elements in here. So it's throwing a lot of ideas at the wall, and I think most of them do stick, and it works particularly well. And it even manages to make these like traditional greys kind of creepy in this one. So it was brought some interesting ideas to the table, and as it was really surprising obviously finding out that he'd obviously done Spontaneous as well. We were doing the research, and it was like he'd done Spontaneous and he did Underwater and he did
a lot of films
Jane Got a Gun and stuff. Yeah, basically a lot of films we enjoyed. Like last year, he was responsible for it. Kind of the same with Ted Kotcheff. I was over on the Feminine Critique for their Stocking Stuffers doing Borrowed Hearts, which is like a Time Life Christmas movie. And it was like, Ted Kotcheff, why does that name sound familiar? It's like, oh yeah, because he did Rambo First Blood and Waking Fright. And it's sort of like, apparently later in life got a little lighter and did Christmas movies instead. I'd still somewhere. I think I'm really interested to see what he does next now. So it's going to be interesting to see what his next project comes up. I mean, he's done several with Netflix now, and obviously this latest one with Hulu. So hopefully we'll see something in the coming year from him as well, and see what else he brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Duffield definitely is one that's on my radar as well. I mean, at the same time, like, I never think about Caitlin Dever, who plays a main girl here as Bryn, and I remember her from Short Term 12, and then I don't remember her in many other things, but I always feel like I've seen her in other things that's been good, and I think that here we really see this big improvement of her character, because there's just so, the challenge of having things where it's all in your reactions and in your expressions when you don't talk, and I think she grasped it really, really well. So, yeah, so overall, very, very impressed. Like, obviously this is not a film that I have access to all the time, but if I ever did get Disney Plus again, I probably would rewatch it.
My number 8 is a film that I know a lot of people really like, and it's also a film that I took 3 attempts to finally crack, and that's Makoto Shinka's Your Name from 2016, which is a tale of 2 high schoolers who find that they have the ability to switch bodies, and in doing so finds that each of them is able to help the other in their personal lives and start learning more about each other through these switches, which happen often when they fall asleep. This is a really kind of touching movie, and I thought when it set up, it was sort of like, oh, we've got the red thread of destiny. It's going to be, the high schoolers in love sort of deal, and then we get to the halfway point, and then a meteorite wipes her town out, and it's sort of like, oh wow, I certainly didn't expect that to happen. And it basically becomes about him trying to save her town from being wiped out, because he discovers that he's actually 2 weeks ahead of her. So he has to try and find a way to go back into her body so that he can help evacuate the town and potentially save this girl that he's got this incredible obsession with, yet has never met. This is actually a stunningly animated film, from like the backgrounds and the character animations, and certainly the plotting itself is incredibly charming and fun, and I'm really excited to look at some more of his films, because this is only the second of his films that I've seen. I've got Weathering You still on one side to watch, but the only other film I'd seen was The Place Promised in Our Early Days, which I really didn't get on with, but he's certainly a director who's been getting a lot of buzz in some recent years, and I think it's time that I need to sort of like go and start seeing what else I've been missing of his. So
Yeah, I mean, Your Name, I watched it a few years back, not when it released, probably around 2017, 2018, and it was a movie that I really loved. I think it's like you said, it goes through this unexpected twist, right in the middle, and it changes its tone very quickly, because at the first half, basically when they switch bodies, it's comedic, it's funny, it's charming, it's very romantic. In some ways, it kind of reminds me a little of In Your Eyes, the film we looked at for After Hours a while back with Zoe Kazan, I think. Yeah, and I've actually seen, after that, I was able to watch The Garden of Words, which was on Netflix for a while. I'm not sure if it's still there. Garden of Words is also pretty good. It's not quite as good as Your Name. It takes a different angle, but it is a pretty decent type of, like, it gets you thinking. It's about life, basically, a lot. There's a certain depth to it, which I also think Your Name has that same effect as, the fact of, like, not knowing someone and having, this connection that you want to do everything you can to save her. I think it's really, really good. I really should go back and watch Your Name. I've only seen it that once, but I remembered when I watched it, it was probably one of the unique films of that year that I watched. But back then we weren't doing this show, and we weren't doing the top 5, the top 10 film discoveries. So yeah, it's also one of those films that you definitely want to go back and, you want to, like, some films that you want to go back and relive watching the first time, and Your Name is one of those films, because it's like that shock of the twist that happens in the middle that you'll never get back that moment.
Yeah, it was certainly, because this meteorite that's flying overhead, it seems so inconspicuous, and then it obviously fractures off and, as I said, destroys their town. And it's like, wow, I just really was not expecting that twist. So I think because it has that twist, that's why I liked it as much as I did it. If it had just been sort of like, just the body swapping teens trying to connect with each other, I probably wouldn't have resonated with me as much. But yeah. I think, as I said, that halfway twist is what really sort of helps put it into that top spot.
I think a month or two ago, I was contemplating this really, really cool looking light, which was like the poster of Your Name. and then I ended up not buying it because I thought it was too expensive. But it was super, like, it's super, super nice. Yeah. But yeah, in my 7th place is Park Chan-wook's 2016 film The Handmaiden.
Lovely.
A film that you wanted to watch for the first time again.
Probably it's I mean, it's obviously based on Fingersmith, which is probably the second most popular lesbian novel after Tip in the Velvet. It's about Victorian lesbians. The original novel is obviously The Fingersmith is set in South Korea, and The Handmaid's set in South Korea and takes a very different, more kiki attack. But I'll let you share your thoughts on this one, because I'm a huge fan of this one, certainly.
Yeah, so for those who haven't seen The Handmaiden, which I haven't, because I haven't been able to watch it forever until I got Mubai earlier this year and subbed for a while, for a few months, and then got this done. It's about basically a young woman who is hired as a handmaiden to a Japanese heiress, and then secretly she gets, like, involved in a plot to, I don't know, save her in a way. And it's very to kind of, I think it was to get the money, or I can't remember, but it's just so, I think it's just so great. The Handmaiden itself is, the filming itself is top notch. Like, you're right about the whole like lesbian novel and stuff like that, and those scenes are filmed beautifully. Seriously, so nice. You know, if Ang Lee could learn like 10% of how Park Chan-wook films the scenes, he would be able to do this really well.
Yeah, Park Chan-wook has a real knack for shooting sexy scenes, but it's often once you watch those scenes that you realize there's something horribly wrong, like there's incest or something like that, behind the characters, and it's like, oh no.
Yeah, no, I remember the scene in Stoker, which was the first scene that I think I watched of Park Chan-wook, which I thought was like, I know most people started with Old Boy and all that stuff. No, I started with Stoker.
Yeah.
And I still remember that one scene with Mia Wasikowska and what I can't pronounce her name, and I remember that scene where she was just like, you know, masturbating by herself, and oh my god, that scene was like explosively done well, and it was incredibly well done. I was super impressed. And then that film was incredibly twisted as well. It was like Park Chan-wook's style in a little capsule for American cinema. And it's just so impressive. I think that was when I really, really liked Park Chan-wook. And I think this film really comes back because this year, you know, I had wanted to put Sympathy of Mr. Vengeance in, but when we have a balance between the two, I really think The Handmaiden stands out very well because there is kind of like, you know, there's like a plot in a plot, right? And the twist is really, really nice, which is something that Park Chan-wook does also really, really well. It's an incredible film, like from all angles, from narrative, from filming, you know, cinematography, the pacing is very, very well done.
I can't say that my pick for number 7 is as classy because I chose Evil Dead Rise, which was just a bloody good time. This is directed by Lee Cronin and follows on from the Evil Dead remake. This was released in 2023. Lee Cronin, if you're not familiar with the name, he directed A Hole in the Ground, and he basically this time transfers the Evil Dead from the woods into the city, in particular an apartment block, as 3 siblings find an ancient vinyl that summons the evil forces that then run amok in the building, taking over the body of their mother, and then horrible things ensue, as is the way of the Evil Dead. This was just taps into everything that is great about the Evil Dead. It is funny, it is violent, it gives you catchphrases which would be really great if you had a death metal band. My personal favourites being Mummies with the Maggots and Titty Sucking Parasites. Yeah, as I said, if you like the Evil Dead movies, I think you'll have a really fun time with this one. As I said, it's stupidly violent, and the end game for this one is particularly spectacular as we get to see the Rat King monster, which is, if you know what a Rat King is, then just imagine that with people, and yeah, pretty much where this one goes. But yeah, I think it was a really great time, and from start to finish, I just had a complete blast with this one. So the fact that it switches things up from the woods into an apartment block, I think was a refreshing change of pace. Even though it's not a heavily populated apartment block, as I think a lot of people were expecting, it still manages to deliver. We get some interesting characters and some very creative kills, and you will probably never look at a cheese grater in the same way again.
I love the Evil Dead series a lot. But Evil Dead Rise, I watched part of it in September when I was at a chalet with my family. The kids, or well, the kids excluding my child because he was sleeping. Was watching Evil Dead Rise. They're not kids; they're teens. And then no, they were watching it, and the adults were chatting in the background. We were just looking at the film, and I wasn't super impressed. I thought it felt a little bit. I felt like it was pretty generic. Like, you can expect a lot of things that were happening. But obviously, like, I trust your your judgment, considering I watched bits of it when action was happening and horror was coming in and there was like loud sounds and whatever. Then I'd look at the screen a little. So no, I mean,
oh dear God.
But no, I can't really draw super. I think that, I do think that when I was watching this, I do think that I do appreciate the change of location, because always being in the woods is kind of a little bit exhausting. But it's definitely a film that I would go and watch the whole thing at one point, because I do want to complete watching The Evil Dead. So yeah, I mean, definitely interested in this.
Number 6, Kim.
Yes, my number 6 is a film from this year again, called, it's a Chinese film, Ride On, starring Jackie Chan, where he plays as kind of like a washed up stuntman, and he lives with his stunt horse, which because of that he doesn't actually own the horse, that he's now caught between that the debt collectors are trying to take back the horse after the actual owner died, and they're debt collectors from the person who died, who's trying to get back some of his property to cover up the debt, and he ends up fighting them off, but basically they're still after him as he tries to he's trying to kind of become a sensation again and help his, with the help of his stunt horse. In some ways, I think the film is a tribute to Jackie Chan, and the director definitely has a strong, the director Larry Yang, who wrote the script as well. I feel like he has a strong type of love for Jackie Chan and his films, and he decided, I'm guessing he did this film as a tribute to stuntsmen, but also as a tribute to Jackie Chan himself. Namely, there was one part of the film where Jackie Chan watches a reel of a bunch of films that he's done and all the crazy stunts that he's done and the bloopers of it and all that. While the film runs pretty long, and there are slight pacing issues, I think that for me, because I grew up with a lot of Jackie Chan films, that it was a lot of nostalgia that got me really emotional, and it's a surprise that you're watching a film with Jackie Chan in it that you get emotional. And I literally like shed some tears over like Jackie Chan, his career, and even like the relationship he has with his horse Red. I think that, when you're going through the background of the life of someone who's struggling to really make it, especially with stuntsmen, and now that, with the CGI and stuff like that, how do you compete between the two, right? I think it's a film that's very reflective, I believe, of the film industry, probably more in China than here. So it makes more sense that I think that, for Chinese people, it might be a little bit more, like, it might be more memorable and meaningful.
Yeah, Right On, I really enjoyed. I felt that the script was a little fragmented, and the runtime is certainly overly generous, but at the same time, it's a film which is incredibly touching, especially Chan's performance with his wonder horse Red. The pair have such great on-screen chemistry, and it's that sort of chemistry which really sort of keeps the film as engaging as it is. You also have him reconnecting with his daughter, who he's had a sort of fractured relationship with, and that was also really touching as well, because she's a lawyer in training, and she's sort of helping him on the legal side, and her fiance is a newly trained lawyer who sort of, while he's wants to be a lawyer, he sort of struggles with the guilt of and responsibility of actually winning cases and the repercussions that it has. And yeah, I think they really sort of, it's kind of nostalgic in many ways to Chan's sort of like history as a stuntman, and in the end it says that it pays tribute to both like Hong Kong stuntmen and the film industry as a whole. So when we see like clips of his previous work, we get to see the seal hat from First Strike makes an appearance, which I thought was kind of cute. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's one of his better films that he's done in recent years. It's certainly miles ahead of the stuff he did in the West, such as like The Medallion and The Tuxedo, which were just absolute garbage. So the only thing about this film, though, is that there's scenes where he's like constantly behind the horse, and that made me anxious as all hell because you don't stand behind horses.
Yeah, I know. And the thing with like another thing is, you were talking about the daughter's boyfriend, and he's played by Kevin Guo, which is in recent years he's really gained a lot of popularity. Surprisingly, because he actually started off in basically a traditional performing art of basically a comedy show style it's basically called Crosstalk, and he started in that, which got him his popularity, and he went into film, and now I just think like because of that he really nails a lot of the comedy points, and he's really become an actor to look out for in recent years. So it was really nice to see. I usually see him in variety shows more than in actual film. So it was a really nice experience for me to really see that, the solid acting that he's able to do here. So that was fun. Plus, who doesn't like to see Jingwoo every once in a while pop up as cameos? Because that's all he seems to be doing. He popped up like in a small role for Wandering Earth, and then now he's here. So yeah. So what's your number 6?
My number 6 is Aguirre, The Wrath of God from 1972, directed by Werner Herzog, everybody's favourite German and narrator. This film is one that I've had on the watch pile for far too long, and it's one of his classic movies that he made with Kinski. The film itself follows a Spanish expedition searching for the lost city of gold in Peru as they trek down the Amazon. Led by Don Aguirre, who is here played by Kinski, who himself is a ruthless leader and kind of a madman, which makes him a perfect fit for Kinski, who is, of course, if everyone knows, is a raging nutbag. And Herzog is probably the only director to have made 5 films with him. Most people only made 1 film with Kinski, but he made 5, and their friendship is kind of legendary. The fact that they were like the best of enemies and the best of friends. But this film is really fascinating. It's incredibly shot, and it's really surprising as well to think that Herzog was really early into his career when he made this film and basically went out to Peru with a film crew. And it's got this wonderful, almost like documentary sort of style to it. So there's scenes where you'll see like the cameraman put his hand in to stop like a carriage falling over, or you see the boom mic drop into shot, and it only adds to this film. And as I said, it's almost like we sent a documentary film crew back in time to follow Aguirre and his team as they're going down the river looking for this city of gold and only finding madness and death on the route. And it's just a really incredible movie, and one that I really just really enjoyed so much that we launched an offshoot of the AC Film Club with the World Cinema Film Club. This was our first pick that we did for that show, and yeah, I think you should watch this film twice, really. You should watch it once normally and then watch it the second time with the commentary track, because Herzog's commentary track is just so good. And just how laid back he is about the whole situation. It's sort of like you're just making films in Peru, and it's sort of like, oh, it's no danger if you just prepared and stuff. And he talks about like swimming across the river with like just a football so they could run lines across, and it's just this real DIY filmmaking ethic that he brought to the film. And there's some really interesting stories about the making of the film that they cover on the commentary tracks. So, and I mean, you get to listen to Herzog speak for an hour and a half, which I think is great in itself, because he's got a wonderful accent and narration voice to him. So. But Kim, I believe you weren't a fan of Aguirre though when you watched it. Well,
I'm not a fan. This is considered a historical fiction, and I'm really not big on historical fictions. There's like the rare one that I can't even remember that I'll like. So basically, it was set to fail from the beginning for me.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to like it. I did like a few, like, I did like the ending a lot when they were in the boat and, you know, like they were like sailing on the raft and then all of a sudden these arrows start, like the scene changes and then the arrows suddenly appear in the legs and they're like, oh, this arrow doesn't exist. And there's like, no, the arrows are real, you know. Like, I thought that was really entertaining. Yeah, the beginning is really good, and I like the documentary style of it. It's just, you know, for me, it's kind of like, as you're going through this, you're kind of like, okay, well, what is going on? You know, like, I don't know what's happening. Like, you know, like, I understand the strokes of the film, the general idea of it, but I'm not, you know, it's not something it's not a material that fascinates me.
Yeah.
I can expect probably my husband would like it more. But me personally, like, it's okay, you know. It's not. I probably liked certain elements of it more than the film as a whole, but I can see the merit of it for someone who does like this genre of film. Yeah. So my number 5 is the Korean film, which is like an action, I don't know, sci-fi mystery, whatever you want to call it. The Witch Part 1, The Subversion. Directed and written by Park Hoon-jung, which I don't know what else he did, but...
Witch Part 2?
Yeah, he saw, he did The Witch Part 2, and he did I Saw the Devil, I believe. The screenplay of I Saw the Devil. Not sure if he directed it. Yeah, he also... Did he direct it? I think he might have directed it also. No, he didn't direct it. He did a screenplay of I Saw the Devil. And I believe Night in Paradise he also directed. Which I've heard of, but I haven't seen. And, so anyways, The Witch is The Witch Part 1, at least. Because I believe it's a 3-part. The third part hasn't been released yet, as this goes up. The second part is available already. It's called The Other One. I also watched, but it did not make my top 10. So The Witch is about basically a high school girl, witch, with amnesia, who was taken into a very ordinary farming family, I guess. And as she's living this normal life, she decides to go to audition for her singing or something like this. And because of this one exposure, all of a sudden, all of her past that she's forgotten comes to haunt her. And the film turns from, like, ordinary everyday life to 100, where it's like violence and blood and raw, you know.
Yeah, she just turns into mini John Wick, doesn't she?
Yeah, and I think it's really fun because the film, for the most part, you really don't know if she remembers it, if she actually has amnesia. And I think that that's one of the really fun elements that they do really well, is that they play the first half of the film where you basically keep thinking that she's just scared. She's just a scared girl with amnesia. She doesn't know why all this is happening to her. And then, you know, it's like suddenly you don't know if it's something that happened or it's a switch, if she's like pretending. And, you know, there's like all these different groups of people that are after her. and it's just crazy, right? I just think it's a film that really takes it from 0 to 100 really, really well. Honestly, I wasn't that impressed with part 2, but I am definitely looking forward to part 3 when the whole thing comes together.
Yeah, this is it's a surprising film in many ways, because it's the distribution for it has been pretty lousy. So over here in the UK, you can buy like a digital copy for like £5, but it'll turn up occasionally like the film channels, and I believe it's on Shudder as well currently. But
yes.
It feels like the distribution of this one has been so lousy, it's sort of like just appeared from nowhere. And it's slowly been building a little bit of a cult following especially since it's ended up on Shudder, which as a platform, has frequently been surprising of the films they've got, because they also got Tigers Aren't Afraid as well, which was another film that we rated very highly when we covered it. But this one, as I say, it's got elements of like Firestarter and Hannah in there, and as I said, those at the end when it goes like completely like mini John Wick. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I'm glad that you got to watch it for the first time as well, Kim.
Yeah, I mean, a little side trivia is the two main characters, the girl, Kim Dami, and the guy, Min Soo-ju, actually did a drama together where they hate each other, and it's on Netflix. It's like on Netflix. It's called My Beloved Summer. I have yet to watch it. I'm definitely looking forward to it. It looks like a fun little Korean comedy drama series type of thing. So, who knows? I'll try and get to that in 2024. So what's your number 5?
My number 5 is just me being a shameless fanboy, because it's the Beastie Boys story from 2020, directed by Spike Jonze. This sees Survivor members Mike Diamond and Adam Horitz share the story of the band over the 40 years of friendship and music making that they put together, all compiled with Spike Jonze, who's been a long-time collaborator with the band. And it's a fascinating time capsule. It's great if you've never heard of the Beastie Boys, as it's them providing a history of their career as they go through all the albums, and it's like they're self-depreciating and humble, and the fact that they managed to stay on track is something kind of legendary for them, because the Beastie Boys are notorious for constantly getting off track whenever they're interviewed about anything, and there's interviews where they spend 40 minutes arguing about their favourite types of cream cheese rather than promoting what they're supposed to be. So this is just a really fun documentary, and the fact that there's so much great sort of like archive footage in here, when they cover things such as like the release in a Paul's Boutique, this like legendary rap album, and they say they go into it and they've got all this like faith and build up, and nobody buys it. It becomes this epic flop for them only years later to be like acclaimed as this legendary album and this key moment in rap history. So the Beastie Boys story, I think, is really fantastic. The only downside is on the Apple Plus, which is probably one of those players that you probably won't bother to have, because it's a pain in the ass to get your login details sorted for it, and then the selection's hardly there. But I think the Beastie Boys story is, if you're a fan of the Beastie Boys or you're the slightest bit interested in their story, I think it's a really worthwhile documentary to check out.
Well, I happen to not be a fan of Beastie Boys.
No? Well,
and I also
fine,
don't have
then.
Apple Plus, so it's one of those that those titles that I didn't get a chance to catch up on. I watch random documentaries sometimes for fun, so I mean, if I did have Apple Plus, I wouldn't have minded watching it. But yeah, I mean, it's probably something that I probably won't, just because it's not, the interest for me is not there.
It's a generation thing. It's because I'm older, so I remember the Beastie Boys, like, and
I don't
just like grandpa music.
I don't think it's the age difference, because our age difference isn't that much, but it's more the fact that I grew up with a lot of canto pop, and I got exposed to like American and more of the music when I started going to school, and maybe like later in my, like the second half of elementary school, I guess. It was not really that phase, I guess. It was other music. It wasn't like Backstreet Boys when I started listening to music.
As I said, it's always good if you're a fan of a band or an artist and they get a really decent documentary, especially a retrospective documentary like this. So, that's why Beastie Boys story is my number 5. But we're into the top 4s now, Kim. And what is your number 4?
My number 4 is one that I believe you talked about when we were doing the film club, and it's Perfect Blue 1997, Satoshi Kon.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, I finally watched it, and you know, we already talked about it. You know, I watched it already. Perfect Blue is really good. I mean, before this, I think last year Tokyo Grandfathers made my list. So it just made sense that it made maybe if next year Millennium Actress lands on one of those streaming services, it would land on my list also. Then all four will be in. Yeah, but Perfect Blue is basically, if you don't know what it is and you haven't watched it, or you're late like me, it's about Mima, a who was part of a J-pop idol group, who decides to leave the group to become a full-time actress. And as she's filming this, she starts realizing that there's a lot of threats that starts happening to her, as well as like a lot of changes that she's going through as well personally. I think, in terms of, this film being a psychological thriller horror type of anime, is one of those films that it's a wild ride. I mean, it is a wild ride. It's a film, I think, that I had to watch 2 times to fully grasp all of the little things in the film, and really appreciate it for everything that it was. But yeah, no, it was it's definitely, like, Satoshi Kon is gone too soon. He has such a great eye for, great eye and just great eye for cinema and how to execute it. Obviously, this is loosely based on the novel Perfect Blue: Complete Metamorphosis, and it's just such a great film.
Perfect Blue, I remember when it came out. I mean, it came out really when a lot of anime was basically sort of like sci-fi and horror and demons and cyberpunk and robots and mecha, and then you have Perfect Blue comes on, which is this intelligent adult psychological thriller, and it just blew everybody's minds. And I think Satoshi Kon, every time he released a film, he did it time and time again. Darren Aronofsky is such a huge fan of this. He bought the rights to the film just basically so he can steal shots from it, and you'll see shots replicated in Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan from this film. And it's also funny when you watch this now, because at the time it was released, the internet was still a new thing. Yeah. So you have characters say wonderful things such as, "What's the internet?" and www. Like they're trying to figure out what the internet is. So it's kind of wonderfully nostalgic in that way. And yeah, I think Perfect Blue, like the title says, is perfect.
I mean, it's really interesting because I was doing some research on this, and I realized that this film was actually in it's actually opened in Fantasia Film Festival here in Montreal, the second year that it was in effect. And back then, when Fantasia, no one really, like, when it was actually about Asian films. So it was a really fun fact for me, because back then I hadn't started following Fantasia. I knew it existed back then, so probably I had seen it in Crossing, like picking up the magazines and stuff, but I'd never seen the film until now. It's really interesting. I really shows how things how things have developed in the Montreal society and film and stuff.
My number 4 is a little junk food for the soul, and that's Bullet Train, the Brad Pitt vehicle from 2022, directed by David Leitch. Here he plays a assassin who's got the unlucky code name of Ladybug, who finds himself on a train with a whole bunch of other assassins who have all basically set to take him out. This is just a really fun film. It reminds me a lot of Smoking Aces in many ways, and the fact that you have a bunch of assassins descending on one location. The fact that all the assassins all got their own sort of like techniques and methods, and they're all such colourful characters, makes it just such a really fun film throughout. And I think Brad Pitt has got such great comedic timing in it, because while he's also an effective assassin, he's also a klutz, and because it leans hard into that sort of comedic vein without it being a comedy, I think that's also why it plays up so well. But no, Bullet Train is a film that for the longest time I thought was going to be my number 1, but obviously didn't end up there, so it sits now at my number 4 spot instead.
Yeah, Bullet Train I caught up to recently, and honestly it would have been on my top 5 if I wasn't watching it to prep for your list. Because I love the movie to death. It's been a while since I've watched, like, in recent few months. Actually, after Halloween, I don't think I watched a whole lot of films, but Bullet Train is a treat. Seriously, it was surprisingly fun, and it's like I think it's like a over 2-hour runtime, but it's like snap of your fingers and it's done. I think everything is done so well in there, from the vibe, and I really like that setting, like the whole setting of the train. And then it made me think about what are the best movies set on a train.
There's a Sonny Chiba movie also called Bullet Train as well. So when we covered it over on AC Film Club, I think there's a bunch of people who tuned into that show thinking we were talking about the Brad Pitt one, and I don't know, maybe they were disappointed, but that episode has done surprisingly well, and probably as a result of it.
Yeah, no, Bullet Train is fantastic. I mean, the cast itself is fun, and there are so many like little characters, and I honestly am not a big fan of Joey King after her child actress phase. But this movie, I really thought she did really well. She did really, really well as Prince. So no, I was very, very impressed. It's great in so many ways. Like it's like you said, it's kind of like junk food, but it's just so entertaining, and it's I think that's what you need sometimes. That's what like cinema should be. It should be just a fun time.
Yeah, I completely agree. What's your number 3, Kim?
My number 3 is, I believe you were surprised I had never seen it before, and it's the teen comedy, I guess, 1999, 10 Things I Hate About You. It's starring Heath Ledger and Julia Stiles and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, all very, very young and alive, for one of them at least. And basically it follows Heath Ledger's character Cameron, who basically him and Julia Stiles' character by Bianca, they don't want to date. They basically on this thing where they don't want to date, and then they end up basically falling for each other when it was like Cameron is, wait, I'm getting mixed up now. Let me redo this. 10 Things I Hate About You is basically about a guy played by Cameron, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who can't date Bianca, who is a younger sister of an antisocial sister, Kat, played by Julia Stiles, who basically they have a deal with their dad that unless the older sister dates, she can't date. So they set up an entire plan to put Heath Ledger's Patrick to try to charm Kat into dating him. And then eventually, of course, the inevitable happens, and they actually fall for each other. The story itself, I think, is not super unpredictable. But at the same time, I think the film itself is unique because it takes, like, the characters that we're dealing with are different from the normal type of girl, I suppose. And the chemistry between Heath Ledger and Julia Stiles is really, really, really good. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty unique as kind of like a teen rom-com.
Yeah, 10 Things I Hate About You is another film I also came really late in the game too. It's also another of those films which is a classic novel adapted to reworked for 18 audience. So we'd seen this previously with Emma Became Clueless, Dangerous Liaisons became Cruel Intentions, Tim and the Shrew obviously became 10 Things I Hate About You, and really sort of introduced us all to Heath Ledger, who would obviously go on to do wonderful films such as like A Knight's Tale, Brokeback Mountain, and obviously Dark Knight. And yeah, I think it's a really fun sort of high school comedy. I think it's really good, and I think Julia Stiles is also really feisty as well, which is never a bad thing to see.
Isn't it the theme, like, I think that, when you have like kind of like a feisty female lead, it's always super fun to watch. And it's also why I like To All the Boys I Loved Before, and a lot of other teen comedies that really stand out for me. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is William Friedkin's Sorcerer, which is... I've been going through the Friedkin's filmography. This one was released in 1977 and features 4 criminals who have been basically isolated to this South American mining town where it's basically criminal purgatory. They're stuck there, they can't get out because any money they make is basically being taken by the corrupt cops, and they find that this glimmer of hope by undertaking this dangerous transportation job, because there's a fire over on the oil well and they need to transport this dynamite, but it's got wet, so it's incredibly unstable. But if they can transport it all the way to the oil fire, then they make enough money to get out of this jungle hell that they've been trapped in. This is an incredible film, and it's one which, if you've not seen it, it's definitely worth checking out. It's based in part on Wages of Fear, and features Roy Schneider, Bruno Cremer, Francisco Rubini, and Amadou. And each of these guys, they're all horrible people. They've all come from various criminal backgrounds that have sort of landed them in this, as I said, the criminal purgatory. And the fact that in this town nothing works, the fact that they have to Frankenstein these 2 trucks together from the bits of other trucks, and then they have to travel through the jungle, which is like horrible, hideous terrain where they have to like battle for every inch that they go through, all while making sure that they don't rock the trucks too much, otherwise they'll blow themselves up. And the cinematography is just so wonderfully fantastic, and there's a scene where they transport these trucks across a rope bridge, and you see it like swaying, and the truck leans over to the side, and so much of this the film was actually shot as you see it in the film. And for years I'd seen this shot of them on the bridge, and I thought, oh wow, they actually went on the bridge with this truck, because I heard that all the shots that were done actually on location. And while I was watching the behind the scenes, Franklin said that they put in all this sort of hydraulics in there to tip the bridge, but the nearby village found out that he was directing the film, and he had done The Exorcist prior to this, so they all moved out of the village because they thought he was like this devil director, and he felt so bad that he's sort of like, oh, I don't want people to like leave the village because I'm making a film nearby. So, but if you get the special edition, there is also a 2-hour interview between him and the director of Drive, whose name sort of eludes me at the minute, and basically Franken arguing with him for 2 hours. Basically any question he has, Franken's like basically argues with him, and I think it's just such a really fantastic film. The fact that we now have a really nice cut of the film as well, so you can watch it in like the most highest quality that it's been available. And yeah, I'm currently working my way through Friedkin's other movies. I've only seen a couple of his films, like I've seen The Exorcist, I've still got French Connection, Live and Die in LA, and my mother-in-law bought me a copy of Cruising, which I think she mistook for being gay porn. So that was a fun conversation to have on Christmas Day. Came so close to putting this in my top spot, but my top 2 picks were just too good and they beat it out, so it sits now instead at number 3.
Yeah, Sorcerer is a good film. I had a really good time with it when I saw it. My only thing is that I thought the first half was a little slow when they were setting up all the characters and getting them all into this purgatory, I guess. But you know, it's like right smack at the middle that they get into, like, they get hired to transport this explosive thing, and then basically, they're basically once they start that segment until the end, it's fantastic. It's like it really makes up for the first part, because it's incredible, like, to watch all the things they need to go through, and Roy Scheider is his name. Is that how
Yeah.
you say his name? And he's such like he's like I think the him and the guy who plays the Frenchman, I forgot his name, is so good. They're both incredible actors, I think. Which really they really do carry the film really, really well. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Number 2 then, Kim.
Number 2 is a film that actually stuck pretty well for the most part. It was actually top of my list for the longest time, and obviously it got beat out recently at the year end. Watched this back in February, I think, or January maybe. I can't remember. Anyways, so. This film is a Chinese World War II espionage thriller called Hidden Blade, and it stars Tony Leung and Yibo Wang, a young Chinese actor, very up and coming recently. In the last few years, he's been really built himself a really good name. This was aired in Chinese New Year, which is around the time I watched it, I believe. The film is set during the War of Resistance. Normally, I'm not really into, like, I do like espionage thrillers, but not really into World War II ones. I think the last one I liked was that Tom Hanks one, which I can't remember the name of. But this one is really, really good. I think because, obviously there's Tony Leung, and it basically takes place. I don't really want to talk too much about it, because if you're trying to watch it, it's gonna really kind of be a lot of spoilers, because part of the thriller is the unknown of who is the espion, who is the spy in this whole thing. But yeah, it's set in in the time between the Japanese occupation of China and the rise of China's Communist Party. So where basically this network of spies which seemingly seem to be working for Japan, but they're not. They're kind of working undercover, and you go through a lot of different interviews as they're trying to figure out how to, I guess, infiltrate and that sort of thing. You get a very interesting look of this kind of spy network, the people who are where their loyalties are as they shift throughout the film. And this film is I think that's where it really is interesting, because you watch a lot of the characters change, and as you near the end and the big plot really unfolds, it really there's a lot of surprises at the end, I think, that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, this was one I was hoping to watch before we recorded, but unfortunately I did run out of time, so I'm looking forward to checking it out, especially if it's hidden at number 2. It sort of really emphasizes the fact that I should have got on to watching this instead of Ride On, but hey-ho, it's something to look forward to, and it'll be interesting to see where it ranks when we come to do the list next year now, so I'm very excited to see this one. So,
what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a film that was, for the longest time this year, my number 1 pick, and it's a film that we were going to be covering in an upcoming season, and that is The Menu. The Menu is a film, I'm not sure where to actually place it, whether it's a black comedy or a horror, but it's directed by Mark Mylod, and sees an absolute stellar cast brought together from... which makes it all the more surprising that this is the same director who also gave us Ali G in The House, which is probably one of the worst movies ever made, to then go on to make one of the best movies ever made. Here, Ralph Fiennes plays this superstar chef who has his own private island, which hosts his restaurant, where the guest list is super exclusive, and in the course of the film we see him preparing a number of dishes, as a dinner service unfolds, and the guests suddenly discover that not everything is as it seems. Amongst the cast, we've got Nicholas Hoult, Anna Taylor-Joy, and we also get to see John Leguizamo making another appearance on this list. This is a film I just had an absolute blast with. As I said, it's funny and violent, and it constantly surprises you right up until the jaw-dropping finale, which would seem preposterous if that we weren't so bought into the premise that it just seems so fantastic. And it's sort of really topped off by a career best performance by Ralph Fiennes, who manages to not only make the words Taco Tuesday seem like the funniest thing in the world, but also manages also to serve up probably the sexiest hamburger shown on film. This is food porn at its best. It's a truly fantastic film that thumbs its nose at the culinary institution and at the same time manages to deliver some truly gorgeous looking food porn to the screen as well as some rather shocking violence to boot. The Menu, I think, is just a fantastic film, and better still, it's on Disney Plus, so it's really easy to find as well.
This is an upcoming review for us that's coming on the next season probably or whatnot. So next season or the one after, I think, and it's just, I don't really want to talk too much about it because it'll ruin our discussion that we're going to talk about. But The Menu fell just short of my top 10 because I had a very outstanding films which came in between. But no, I mean, The Menu is a really, really great film. I've always been a fan of Ralph Fiennes, despite the whole. I even liked him as Voldemort. Okay, I'm gonna just admit it. I'm a Harry Potter fan. I even liked him as Voldemort. I liked him in English Patient. I liked him in Voldemort. That's where I started with Ralph Fiennes. But he has just so many, he's just such a chameleon sometimes. Like he's able to grasp so many roles so well, and The Menu is really, I do agree, it is one of his career. I think it is his career best. And at the same time, you also have wonderful performances by Nicholas Hoult and Anna Taylor-Joy, which I think that these two are also very, they're getting better and better with the roles that they do. Nicholas Hoult has been one that I've been really looking out for and watching more of his films over the last few years, and gradually I'm catching up to some of it. And I have to say, a lot of the films are not bad. They're just, more indie. So not a lot of people watch it, or cult. So it's interesting to watch where he's come from the start till now. Definitely a really, really good pick. I mean, if it wasn't for Perfect Blue and Handmaiden and all those, it probably would have eventually landed up, and it would have probably at least been in the 10th spot. It just got bumped off just near the end.
And number one, top of the pile, king of the heap. What is your number one pick, first time watch for 2023, Kim?
Moonrise Kingdom, by Wes Anderson, from 2012. If you haven't watched Moonrise Kingdom, I don't know who hasn't. It's about a pair of young lovers who flee their town, and it causes the entire the whole local search party to go out to look for them. And it's a really simple idea which is executed very, very well, I think. There's so much charm in the visuals and the characters themselves and the chemistry between the two characters, and I really love Cara Hayward in the role as Susie. There's so much, the scouts, the captain, everything. It's really, it has a phenomenal cast, and the story is just so fun. It's like a little adventure, a little mini adventure of its own, and definitely, I don't know. I mean, for me, considering we're talking about this, it's basically us giving the the notice that Wes Anderson is coming up. So it's definitely, for me, it's one of Wes Anderson's best.
Yeah, no complaint from myself. Favorite me, I love Moonrise Kingdom. I think it's a really fantastic film, and sort of in many ways taps into that same energy of his earlier films, such as like Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore. I think it's just a phenomenal film from start to finish, and features a real colourful cast of characters. The fact that it makes me nostalgic about my own scouting days, and it's just it's a really cute story, and I'm glad you enjoyed it so much that you made it your number one pick, Kim.
I'm not gonna lie, like, there was probably a fight between probably around 3 Wes Anderson films, and I didn't want to do 3 Wes Anderson films in my top 10, so I decided to pick one, and Moonrise Kingdom won. The other one would have probably, which was very close to me being choosing, was Fantastic Mr. Fox or Royal Tenenbaums, so... But Moonrise Kingdom, I just think, like, basically, it all came down to rewatchability, and I think that if I were to rewatch a movie out of the 3, I probably would have watched Moonrise Kingdom first. So that's that. And how about you? What's your cream of the crop?
My number one pick, as I said, that just came in much like its title of character and destroyed the list, taking the number one spot, and that, of course, is Godzilla -1. This is just...
It's so Godzilla being your first number one. Who would have guessed?
Yeah, I know. Who would have guessed? I know. The Godzilla fanboy picks Godzilla -1 as his best film of the year. Yeah, it's so good. It is just as good as everybody says it is. If you've heard people talk about this movie, it's so good they're putting out a black and white cut of this movie. I wasn't a huge fan of Shin Godzilla, which this follows on from in many ways. That you can actually put the two posters side by side and make your own little Godzilla there. But Godzilla -1 is set in a post-war Japan and follows a kamikaze pilot who is suffering from survivor's guilt from having survived the war, because he faked an engine malfunction on his plane so that he wouldn't have to obviously crash his plane. At the same time, the island he was on was attacked by Godzilla, and he failed to destroy Godzilla when he was still in dinosaur form. And then years later, with the dropping of the atomic bomb, Godzilla becomes his now recognizable mutant form and sets about destroying his town. That he finds a form of redemption. But this is just a really, really phenomenal film. It works on a humanity level, it works on a giant monster level, and it's just spectacular from start to finish. And it even manages to like work in some Jaws references in this, as one of the jobs he gets is clearing sea mines, and the boat they're on looks exactly like the Orca. So we have a scene where Godzilla's chasing after the boat, and it's like you're watching Jaws but with Godzilla instead of a giant shark. I'm really excited to see how they follow this one up, but even if you've not seen any of the others, you can watch it as its own thing. And it's just went straight in as number one. It was it really is that good.
Well, I've only seen the trailer of this, and it does look incredible. Surprisingly, that I think it was like top 20. I have like Godzilla versus Kong if I actually did a top 20 list. So if there wasn't a bunch of stuff that bumped it down, it probably we would have had 2 Godzilla titles in the top. So.
Well, we got Godzilla x Kong Fallen Kingdom, which is coming out next year, so it'll be interesting. We have another Godzilla movie tops the list next year. I don't know. I'm excited for that. We've also got Dune Part 2 coming out, and that's another big franchise I'm a fan of, so it could go so many ways for next year's list, and I'm excited. I mean, is there anything coming up that you're sort of excited to see, whether it's like a new release or an old film on the watch list that you want to see?
So much stuff. Well, I'm hoping that part 3 of The Witch comes out. I don't know if it is. I don't know if there's a release date for it. Dune Part 2 is definitely on there. I actually have my eye on Saltburn, which was recently released on Prime.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I've heard some really good things about it. I'm trying to get my hands on a Hong Kong film that was released. My mom saw it in Hong Kong. She told me it was really good. So, so now I forgot the name of the film. But I'm really interested in it because it's based on a true event. So yeah, I'm interested in seeing that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of films that I have to catch up on.
So that brings us to the end of tonight's episode and puts the close on another year-end list. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to listen to us. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, so say hi to us there, and you can check out our blog, which is moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com, which has got our full archive of episodes available for you to check out as well. But until next time, thank you as always for listening. Thank you to my co-host Kim. Thanks again for listening, and good night. Cool.